Welcome to RevUP Awaken, and I'm your host, Mimi. So much goes on into our appearance here on the physical plane. The spiritual preparation that goes into it includes these factors and many others. Proper timing of birth, the right set of parental figures, the perfect location, the type of body we wish to be birthed into, and the circumstances of the birthing experience. The human part is so much easier when you compare the two. What goes even deeper than this are our soul contracts with others who we will eventually meet in our new lives that will allow the proper flow of events to take place toward our mission. You see, we travel along with our soul family, giving each other a chance to experience and observe a myriad of circumstances that encourages all of us to expand further, each one supporting the other for the good of the whole, a true spiritual team. But what are these soul contracts all about? What goes into the fine-tuning of it all, and then mixing in that final component known as human free will? Can we get it all done to satisfy the needs of a successful spiritual expansion? Blanca Beyar, author, shamanic healer, spiritual teacher, and guru, joins us today to answer these and other questions regarding the topics of our soul's journey, our spiritual agreements, and the reason we find it necessary to make that giant leap to this dimension. Hi, Blanca. How you doing?
I'm doing very good. Thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm excited to go and dunk my feet into this topic because it's a very important topic. And as usual, the topic that we chose seems to connect us to so many other different types of areas that are connected to the soul contracts. They all seem to play into a related area. So, I just wanted to begin with the first question, just to start it off. And that is, how would you explain what a soul contract is?
First of all, I want to say thank you for having me here again. It's always such a joy to be back. A soul contract is an agreement that we as souls make before we come into this earthly realm. And I always laugh when we talk about soul contracts in classes or in, workshops, because most people who hear what soul contracts is, they'll say, I would never agree to sign up for that.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Like, there is no way. But we need to remember that what soul contracts represent is an opportunity to grow, to evolve, and to help each other through that evolution, that path, that journey. And how we do that is through the interaction and the sharing of the experiences, right? And so a soul contract is an agreement that souls make, like you and I, who agreed to meet up in this part of our timeline, to do the wonderful work that we've done, including being part of this beautiful podcast of RevUP and Awaken, right?
Right. And
so on a soul level, when we make these soul contracts, we know that there is an enormous opportunity for growth and for evolution. Even though, of course, in the physical realm, as I said, we may not agree. We may say, like, I would have never signed up for that.
Yes, I
would have never made a contract.
Yes, I'm still looking for my spiritual attorney to get me out of this one. So
Exactly. Well, we have to remember that because of the physical experience, right? Everything is elongated. You know what I mean? Like when we're going through an experience and the challenges of it, the obstacles, the struggle. But on a soul level, even a lifespan of, say, 100 years old is almost like a snap of a finger on the soul level. And it also knows that it's most likely going to achieve every endeavor of that contract, or from a soul level, it's going to try its best, right? And so we don't really question those soul contracts on the soul level, we say, yeah, come on, let's go. Let's take this on, let's take this struggle, this challenge, this karma, obstacles, because we're going to grow.
Yeah, because we see it as a challenge over there. But here, we're groaning and moaning every time we have to think in terms of what we have to go through.
Absolutely. And, we're going to get right into the heart of that. Why is that? Like, why is it that if on a spiritual, a spirit level, we did agree, then what happens here? And what happens is that we're not making the connection that this is a soul experience. And I'm going to say that again because it's important. We are not making the connection that this is a soul experience. You follow? We move through the experiences as a, human. And as humans, we're conditioned to not believe that we can get through things, the struggle, the challenge, the punishment, the everything that is not in alignment with the soul, which is, I'm going to accomplish this, and this is growth. If we find ourselves, if we're exploring, if the listeners are exploring, I want to learn more about my soul contracts, one of the first things that they should do is to connect to their soul, and to start to look at every experience from a soul experience. Yes? Does that make sense?
Right. And also, I think you get clues that your life is more than just having to do with the mundane. You sense that there's some purpose that you have here. Yes. And you know what? If we're not connected to the soul, right, then it's going to seem like life is mundane. Yeah.
We have many obligations. This world requires for us to have a lot of obligations, right? And we have families, we have to pay bills, right? And so if we are allowing ourselves to just vibrate from the physical experience without the soul connection, everything is going to seem very mundane, and it's going to seem very taxing, and very consuming, and this is why, the inquiry of, is there more to life than this, is what begins the soul journey, because the soul is saying, like, absolutely, there is so much more, even in the midst, actually, I think that that's a great opportunity for people when they're in that place of feeling stuck and feeling, that there isn't any more to life. I think that right there is a window where if that inquiry, if the window is opened and say, like, is there more to life? Then you can actually start tapping into the soul evolution, the contracts, and what we really came here to do. We didn't come here to just pay bills and to struggle.
Thank God for that.
Yeah. Matter of fact, that wasn't part of the agenda, even though it may be part of the process. Right?
So what would you say is the primary reason for having contracts?
The soul has an individual Akashic record, or a matrix, if you may, where it has, say, a set number of experiences that it desires or needs to fulfill in order to feel realized, right? Now, we have to remember that on the cosmic side, the soul is already complete. So what are we talking about, having an Akashic library of experiences that it needs? Well, the soul is already realized in the cosmic realm, but this is why we are on Earth, because that sense of self-realization and awareness has to happen in the physical realm. That's why we're here, right? And so when the soul makes that first agreement that, yes, I'm coming to Earth and I need to have all of these experiences in order, I know that all of these experiences are not only going to evolve my experience of soul evolution on Earth, but it's also going to help me help others, right? And so this is where the soul contracts begin. Because say you and I, say, let's keep it simple, let's keep it to what our lives really are now. I've written 18 books, so I'm an author, right? You are doing these incredible RevUP a podcast. So we're sitting in the cosmic console table and we say, you know what? I'm going to help you. I'm going to show up in your life and you're going to find me perhaps because you read one of my books, right? And once we make that initial contract, then I'm going to come on to your show, and we're going to have these amazing conversations. And that's a contract, right? And the ultimate goal is what? To help humanity, right? To share knowledge or wisdom, right? Mm-hmm. Of course, this is a good example. Yeah. Or, a positive. What happens when we make those contracts that I'm going to go into an abusive relationship, right? That I'm going to have parents who are going to be neglectful, abusive. How can we envision that that's a soul contract? Well, they are. They are as well, right? Right. And why would we agree, right? Yes. Why would a soul agree to have abusive parents or be in an abusive relationship? Well, because on a soul level, the soul knows that those experiences, although painful, are going to give the soul an opportunity to take a stance, to declare themselves, to love themselves, right? To persevere, right? And those experiences are all catalysts to help the soul unveil itself into its true essence, which is love, which is light of the self. And so we do agree to these painful contracts.
Yeah, because I would think that, if I'm using myself as an example, when you go through a childhood that has a lot of pain in it, you can choose either of two roads. You can allow yourself to be, or you can choose the road where you, as you say, persevere and you strengthen yourself, and then you end up standing in your own truth and not allowing anybody to stamp their foot on you, and you become a stronger person out of the whole thing. Defeated the whole experience.
Absolutely, yes. And you know what? It is important to talk about, you just said, there's more than one road, right? Yes. And that's absolutely true, because we have to make it juicy, with the earth experience. We just couldn't agree to these soul contracts. We had to throw in free will, as part of the recipe. Mm-hmm. And that is where now it can take many detours, because on a soul level, we make these agreements, right, to have these experiences together. But then once we arrive here, we have access to free will. And from that zone of free will, we can make other choices. And not remembering that we did make those agreements, we may start detouring to a completely different direction. So now if we take the example again of you and I, right? Mm-hmm. Say, for example, you start having this intuitiveness and this, gravitation to contact me to do this show, right? But I'm going in a different direction. And so I'm saying, I don't want to talk to Miriam. Why does she keep calling me? I don't have time to do these shows. I have better things to do, right? Mm. Meanwhile, you have this pull because innately you remember that we agreed, right? Yes. To come together. Mm-hmm. And you can't understand, why do I feel like I have to keep reaching out to Blanca, mm-hmm. And I don't want anything to do with it, say, right? So that's a very simple, quick example of what does occur, where initially we did agree, but now free will can take us on many different detours, mm-hmm. In the fulfillment of that. We can't leave it there, by the way, Miriam, because what happens, if one soul, right, goes on the detour because of free will, and you have it, say, right, you're making the initiative to call me, right?
Right, yes.
Well, when we, this is why the soul family is so important. Again, this is the soul family that is in the cosmic realm, that's sitting in that console room and saying, well, you know what? Blanca and Miriam are going to agree to this, but we are aware on a soul level that Blanca may start going on a detour and not fulfill her part. And so now there's some other souls sitting on the table, on the council table, and saying, well, you know what, Miriam, don't worry about it. Because if Blanca decides to go on a, take a left and not fulfill the contract, then we're going to have somebody in position to step in. In other words, the beauty of that is that if there's a soul contract where you're going to be helped, right? You're not going to be let down only because I don't show up to meet my part of the contract. Are you understand? Right? Does that make sense? Right?
Yes.
And so, in other words, there's a plan A. That's the first plan. But then there's a plan B. There's a plan C. There's a plan D. And this is why the soul family is so very important because we have backup.
Yeah. No, that's a great example of it, because sometimes people might think about that, because one of the things I was thinking, I believe that if you do veer off in a different direction, you're creating a different timeline. So you're branching off into a different life, and that brings its own reality and its own purpose.
Right.
So that would somehow create a whole different adventure in that life.
But I'll tell you what, and here's where, again, this is such a complex subject because it's so broad, right? When we look at the soul evolution and the soul obligation. When I use the word obligation, I don't mean that we're obligated. The soul is obligated to itself. It's not obligated by anything else.
Right.
It's obligated to itself because the goal is to complete its evolution of self-realization, right? So if we look at the example we just talked about, right, somebody will have to come in. Plan B is now somebody has to step in to help you, say, complete RevUP, right? Because I didn't show up. But that doesn't mean that I don't have accountability for that.
Okay.
In other words, because I signed up, right, I was going to gain something from that contract as well. So if I, through free will, decided to take a detour, that's almost like a class that I have not finished in my semester of evolution. You know what I mean? You will get plan B because you showed up. But now when I transcend back, when I return back to the cosmic space, my report card is going to be pulled out and it's going to say, you missed a semester. You know what I mean? Like you were supposed to fulfill. You get that?
Yes.
Right? And so here on earth, we may ask ourselves, okay, this whole soul contract thing, but what about if the person, doesn't show up? Does that mean we have to come back together? Or does it mean that I can't go forward because they didn't complete it? And the answer is absolutely not. So the good news is we can continue, and they will also have to come back or at a later point have another experience here that will once again place them in that space of opportunity to complete what they didn't. You get that?
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah. So nobody gets away with anything is the bottom line.
That's what it feels like. Now, are there times that we may want to break the agreement, and why and how would we do that?
I think that once the soul agreement is done in the higher realms, the soul is never going to want to break that, because again, it knows that it agreed to that soul contract for the sake of evolution, for growth, and for the completion of many things here, not only for itself, but the people involved, right? The soul contractees, So the soul is never going to say like, you know what, get me out of here, However, in the physical realm, we may want to back back out, right? And
Yes.
again, we go back to those scenarios, being abused, being mistreated,
Yes.
bullying, right? All of these, sex abuse, right? Like, once we enter the body, it's like we don't want to have those experiences, right? And so do we break them? We do break them on the physical level.
Okay.
We walk away from things. We don't heal from them. We don't see the opportunities for growth. We do walk away from many contracts. But like I said a few minutes ago, and it always is going to be yes, that we signed up for a contract for the sake of growth, then sooner or later we will find ourselves in the same situation, in the same scenario, because there is something to conquer there. Let me give you an example. Okay. So a child is abused by its parents, right? And as a child, a child doesn't have many choices, right? It can't run away. It has to succumb to that. But now as a consequence of that soul contract where it agreed, that it was going to become, abuse me, mistreat me. Now, as the child becomes an adult, it has a choice, right? To either stay in the energy of abuse, so feel less than, feel inferior, feel punctured emotionally, right? Or it can look at those experiences and say, there were learning opportunities, or I still have a choice to become a beautiful soul in spite of the fact that I was neglected and abused. Those are the detours, right? Like choice A or B, right? If it chooses to stay in that hurting, puncturing place, right? As opposed to choosing to grow from it, then believe it or not, another soul contract may now step in when they're an adult with more abuse, And why is that? Like, why? Well, we can say, we energetically pull that to ourselves, right? If we feel we deserve to be abused because we were abused as children, then we feel, that we deserve abuse. So of course we're going to gravitate somebody who's going to abuse us, right? Right. But it also can be because we didn't fulfill the contract of persevering, of taking a stance, of loving ourselves. So it's going to keep showing up until we can declare that.
Let me throw this at you, because I'm considering that there's a connection between cutting cords and contracts. And I'll give you an example, like the one I recently had with my father, where we had a session stating that the cord needed to be cut because of the fear that what he brought into the family with the fear was passed on to me, and I needed to cut those cords, which I agreed to because it was necessary. It was time for it to just like go its way, because I need to expand and go on my own way. So would that in any way correlate with the cutting of the cords of something that's like a legacy that just keeps on coming up and up and up? That's more like an effect on your life. But is it because I'm making an intention saying enough is enough, and that cuts that whole connection anyway, in knowingly, spiritually, that I don't need that anymore? Is that just basically my spirit saying, yes, I understand, I don't have to have this in my life anymore?
Exactly. Yes, absolutely yes. And, when we talk about cutting cords, we could only cut cords energetically if you have conscious awareness, right? And conscious awareness equates to evolution.
Yes.
You follow me? Of your soul. So we're really sort of talking about the same thing. No one could, cords cannot be cut until there's a sense of conscious awareness, of why. And so when we did, you and I, the cording of the cuts with your father, it was only because you were consciously aware, not only of the fact that there was a contract,
Yes.
but that you had fulfilled and reached the healing point where now you could consciously let it go, and not keep holding on to that connection of, but my father was this way. Yeah, but it was a opportunity for growth, and it was an opportunity for you to claim yourself. And only when right through the work that we did, were consciously ready and aware of all of that, only then was the cord able to be cut. You follow me? So we cannot cut cords until we reach a level of healing. And that is the same synonymous to say that's why the soul signed up for it, because it wanted to reach a level of evolution. We cannot just go to some shaman or something and say, cut these cords. It's not to say, I cannot speak for every healer or shaman out there, and I'm not going to try. But from my own, as an elder shaman myself, I would say, no, we cannot just cut this cord. This is a contract, right? Only when you have done your part in healing and in stepping in there to, reconcile and fulfill the prophecy of why you signed up for that contract. Only then can we then go in there and say we're complete. Because cutting of the cord is not a disconnection. It really represents completion. It is saying, I have completed this contract. I have learned all I've needed to learn. And I do recognize that there's some kind of attachment that, that keeps bringing me back. And actually, that's probably the final step of the healing, as it was for you, right? When we did the cord cutting, you had done all the work. You had done, you had attained the gift of the experience. But for whatever reason, you were still sort of clinging on energetically to that cord.
Yeah.
And I said, it's done. You've done it. You've completed it. Yes. And only then can we then ask the cosmic force to help us to complete the cord by then cutting it.
It's an awareness that comes to you alone, that you know that you've reached a point where it plays no more of a part in your life.
It plays no more, yes, a part in your life, but more specifically because you've done your part to heal it.
Yes.
You have done your part to heal it.
Be sure to watch out for part 2 of our deep conversation with Blanca Beyar, author, guru, shamanic healer, and spiritual teacher. Catch Blanca on her YouTube channel, Blanca Lavinia Beyar. Visit MiriamASilver.com for many other podcast shows and articles to continue on your personal journey of self-expansion. RevUp would like to hear from you. Send us your ideas and topics you would like to hear about, or perhaps you would like to be a guest on the show. Until next time, keep your vibrations high and your awareness open, and we'll see you soon on RevUp and Awaken.